Welcome back to Parenting to Impress, your go-to podcast to learn practical ways to love God and love others and impress this on the hearts of your children. I am your host, Heidi Franz, a mom who has made a lot of mistakes, but has found grace and truth along the way. Today, I'm joined by a special friend of mine. Holly is here, and she's going to be talking about fostering and adopting. Holly, when I think about foster and adoption and doing it well, you immediately come to my mind. You have done this beautifully. And I think your story can really help other parents who are thinking about fostering, thinking about adopting, or trying to figure out, how do I love on somebody else who is fostering or adopting? So, Holly, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to hear your story.
Thank you. That's nothing but humbling to hear. I appreciate your words.
Well, it has been a joy walking through this journey with you from afar, because we don't live near each other, but from afar, being able to watch you love on this little boy so well, bring him into your home, and in such a way that I don't think this child ever is concerned about, where do I fit in? So, Holly, tell me about your story.
It is a long time thing that has been in my heart to do. I have a lot of adoption in my family. My husband has adoption in his family. Um, I have friends who are adopted. I've always been around it. It's not something that's been foreign to me.
Do you think that was a help or a hindrance?
I think it was a help. I think it was
Okay.
something that always in the back of my mind. It was almost a goal, something that I just wanted to do in this life. My husband went to seminary. One of his seminary professors spoke one time about fostering and adopting, and he said, if anybody needs to be fostering or adopting, it's Christian families. So at that point, that's, really when he started to think about it. When I have a family of my own before we even met, is this something that I want to do? And he felt like it did. After those years of wanting to do that, I became a teacher, and it didn't take long to see that some kids just simply need to be in a different home to thrive.
Yeah.
So really, that's just always been there. When we were dating, we talked about, all the things you talk about, before you get married. How many kids do you want? What's your vision? And both of us, when we were dating, said we would like to adopt at some point.
That's
whether
great.
we have our kids of our own or not, we would still like adoption to be part of our story.
Oh, I love that. So you chose foster adoption. Tell me how you came to that decision.
Mostly because we became aware of the need. The need is huge. You can go a lot of directions with fostering, adopting. You can do it locally. You can do it internationally. Having taught, I think I saw the need was so big locally. That's just where my heart went. And, Michael, was in agreement with that fostering and adopting was what we wanted to do. There's also the obvious, practical, monetary, look at that. Fostering to adopt, while it comes with some risk, that does not cost a lot. That's something that you can just do. And it's not a financial burden to you. To do the straight adoption process, that's where a lot of people, get a misconception of, oh, it costs a lot of money. If you just do that, that is something that, where you see families raising money to be able to adopt. But to do the process of fostering to adopt, that's not something that, would have cost us a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me, how did you get started in foster? What did you have to do? And I assume this varies by states.
This varies by states. Anything that I say will be based on our story in our state, in our county. Even from county to county in your own state can be different.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Things can vary quite a lot, and they can vary from year to year. Laws, regulations are always changing. So anything that I say would be, what happened in our county, in our state during the time period that we did it.
Okay.
The way we got started on the journey was we chose an agency that we wanted to do our process through, and they randomly throughout the year have informational meetings. So, we had been talking about it for a while and finally just thought, let's just go to a meeting. Let's just go listen, see what they say, see if we feel like it's time. And so we went to an informational meeting, and I mean, it just spoke to both of our hearts. Just let's just start. Let's just start. Let's just start the trainings. Let's just go and see where it leads.
Oh, I love that. So do you feel like the trainings that you went through prepared you for what was to come?
The training that we went through was a Christian organization. And really, I would say of them that they trained us the best that they could. I mean, they told us scenarios. They prepared us on what questions do you ask when you get those placement calls? What information do you ask? Don't just accept the first call. Find out some things. They prepared us the best they could on, your child that you bring into your home could deal with this. How are you going to help them? If they're struggling with this area and that area. Do you want to be in contact with bio family? How do you want to deal with that? I mean, I really felt like when we came away from it and looking back at it now, I feel like they prepared us the best they could.
That's awesome.
You never know what's going to happen.
Right.
But I think they did their very best to get us ready.
That's great. Okay, so let's dive a little bit deeper into your story. So you have a biological son. How
Yes.
old was he when you started the adoption, the foster adoption portion?
We started our training when he was 4, and the training
Okay.
took 10 or 11 Monday evenings, I believe is what it was. By the time we actually had our foster child in our home, he was 5. So
Okay.
he was pretty
So
young.
yeah, he was pretty young. So tell me, how did you prepare him? What did you do? Because you're not just bringing a child into your life, you're bringing a child into his life.
Right. Well, he had wanted a sibling for a while and had been talking about it. And so once we decided we were going to start this path, we just explained things to him the best that we could. Every time we would go to a meeting, my parents would keep him at home with them. And we would tell him, this is what we're going to go do, in language that he could understand. And, we just kind of always kept an open dialogue about it to where he could ask questions, things like that. And then, of course, once we got to the point where we were going to actually meet the child that we were going to foster, he went with us. He was part of the meeting and played with them and was around him and was around the family that the child that our now son was currently with. And once we got on the path of knowing he was going to come to our home, he helped prepare the room. His bed had been converted from a crib to a toddler bed, so he helped Daddy put the crib back together and just talking to him, answering any questions that came up in his mind. Letting his teacher know at school was a big thing because sometimes they'll go away from us and they'll think of things that they're maybe even more comfortable asking their teacher about.
Right.
And so we made her aware and said, anything that he asks, answer it. If you don't know how to answer it, let me know. We'll talk about it at home. Just letting everyone around us know we're talking about this. If he says anything, answer him. Just keep it open.
So it sounds to me, Holly, what you did was very similar to what a family would do in a situation where they were bringing home a biological child. I mean, you're
Yes.
having conversations, you are involving the child in the preparation, you're available for questions, and you lay that foundation that questions are welcomed and are okay.
Yes, I think you have to, because especially at his age, you never know how they're processing things.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what they understand and what they don't. And he had no frame of reference for a sibling. So really
Mm-hmm.
just talking about it, whenever so and so comes to our home, that it's going to be like this.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to want to play with your toys. He's going to be in your space. Um, just trying to prepare him the best we could.
Absolutely. Yeah. Going from a single um, child home to having two children, that's a big change for any child, no matter whether it's a biological or whatever the situation is, for sure.
Right.
So tell me, how did you protect him in this? And again, this is going to fall in with a biological child as well as with foster or adoption, but how did you protect his space? How did you protect his things so he didn't feel like he was losing all of himself in this?
Um, Really, I think protecting his space was something we learned.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and I think that would depend on the age of the child that you bring into your home.
Mm-hmm.
When you bring home a newborn baby, they're pretty much just, laying there. They're
Mm-hmm.
not doing
Yeah.
a whole lot.
Yes.
What we brought into our home was a 20-month-old that wanted to play
Mm-hmm.
with his toys. So
Mm-hmm.
he had a lot of things that came with him for him to play with that he had been playing with in a previous foster home. But then we also had our son's toys. So we
Mm-hmm.
just kind of had it all together. And, we allowed our older son to play with our foster child's toys, and we kind of kept it in the mix. But when we pretty quickly realized they're so different that really, our son really needs some time to be able to just do his thing without, the new guy in the middle of all of it. So I think we learned to protect his
Mm-hmm.
space.
Yeah. And I think that's so important, especially for a child is going, well, where do I fit into this situation now? What
Mhm.
do I do with all of this? Because I did have mom and dad's full attention. And
Mhm.
now, in certain situations, it can be that this child is going to need a lot of attention and a lot of focus, which I
Yeah.
know just in talking to you, that's kind of part of your story.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely learning a balance. I would say we're doing that to this day.
Uh-huh.
Still, as needs arise for this one, it's a little more even now because they both have their separate needs.
Mhm,
And we've just kind of fallen into, these are just our
mhm,
sons and this is just our family. And now
mm,
this one needs attention in an area. Well, the other one just kind of has to let us deal with that.
right.
So I that's definitely something you just learn as you
Mhm.
go.
Well, and knowing you and your husband, I have a feeling that you guys did a great job about dividing and conquer. You know.
We have a rhythm. We
Mhm,
definitely have a rhythm of, this is definitely where you carry the weight.
mhm.
And this is definitely where I carry the weight. We've had routines of this is
Right.
what you do, this is what I do.
Which I think hits on a very important topic that before you decide to foster, adopt, or even to have a biological child, you have to be on the same team and be ready because it is not a one sided situation. You have to be 100% in on this.
Yes, definitely. There definitely needs to be agreement between the two of you. Especially when you bring a child into your home that is more than likely going to have needs,
Mhm,
and going to need some attention in some areas, and it's going to have setbacks or trauma or needs for therapies that you had nothing to do with. You're
mhm,
not the cause of it. You weren't there for it.
mm,
Wish it hadn't happened, but now here you are trying to help this child overcome these things.
mhm,
So it definitely needs to be something you're both on board with because
mhm.
there's going to be some work. There's going to be some
Absolutely.
work on everybody's
So,
part.
speaking of work, Holly, what were you not prepared for? What what surprised you? What do you wish you would have known? What would you tell to another mom who's sitting there going, "Hey, I'm thinking about this."
Um, you can only prepare so far for
Hmm.
fostering and adoption. Um, You go to the trainings, you listen to everything they say and you take it to heart. You do your best to become, mentally knowledgeable about what you need to do. As far as preparing for the child's arrival, that's very different than bringing a baby home from the hospital, because you have 9 months to think and prepare and get the right size of clothes and the right gender of clothes, prepare the room and just get all those, have the baby showers, and you just get all of the stuff. As far as preparing for who's going to come to your home, I mean, most times you really can't. You don't know what the phone call is going to be. You don't know what the email is going to be. Someone's just going to call you one day and say, I have a such and such age little boy. He's got these issues. Can we bring him to your home today? And you may likely don't have those size of clothes or a high chair or, the things that they need. There's a lot of preparation that you can't do. So you mostly just kind of have to prepare your mind and your heart to be open and just be ready to move. Be ready to take them in and deal with what they come with, and then gather what else you can,
right,
as quick as you can. Ask friends, hey,
so
I need
did
a
you
here.
absolutely
Hey, does anybody have that?
Yeah, support group. Were you ever called and asked to take a child that you did not feel would be a good fit for your family?
We were, yes.
Tell me about that.
The phone calls always went to my husband because that was just the name that was on file.
Okay.
So there were a handful of times that my husband got a call and said, okay, I need to call my wife and I will get back to you. And he would call me, and I mean, it was agreement every time, for different situations, for different reasons. Pretty quickly, in talking back and forth, we would agree that's not a fit for us. You really do. Of course, you always want to be open to what God has for you, because you cannot plan your life, and you cannot plan what's going to come into your home. But you do also have to have some common sense on what is practical for your current situation, because they are going to come into your life right now. So you have to think of things like, what's feasible? Do we have a bed for this child? How many beds do we have? What age do we want? What situations are we willing to deal with? What do we not want to really have in our home? What do we want our son to not be exposed to? You really have to think it through. And yes, there were a number of phone calls that we said no to. That is not easy, because they would come and be safe with you,
right,
by saying, you don't know where they go. So you cry the rest of the day. And I remember those phone calls to this day, and hope the best. But then again, we never regretted any of the no's, because it just wasn't the fit. Just wasn't the fit for our family.
So I think maybe one of the things from hearing your heart that you would prepare somebody with is just the freedom to say, no, this isn't a good fit. And the understanding that not every child that potentially could come in your home means that's God's will or God's desire for your family. And I so appreciate how you said, is this a good fit for our son? Holly, I'm sure you know this as well, but I know so many families who they have lost relationships with their biological children through the process of adoption. And I can't say why that happened. I don't know. I don't know for sure, but that is so wise, I think, on your part to take into consideration what is going to be best for my son right now.
Having a biological child and bringing an adopted son into the situation, I can see how you would do that. I really, as bad as I hate to say it, and I don't feel like we've lost our son, I feel like we stay pretty tuned in, but I can see, how that would happen, especially if you feel like you've got a well-adjusted, smart, thriving child,
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
have,
Mm-hmm.
and bring a child in that's super needy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, if it was your own child that
Mm-hmm.
was born to you that had special needs, you would jump on it
Right.
with all of your heart, to help that child in their need. um, I could see where, you could kind of forget the other one, we've tried really hard not to do that, okay, how's the other guy doing? Is everything
Right.
going okay here? You do kind of have to mentally remind yourself, you know, keep them all in check.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to ask a tough question.
Oh boy.
Do you feel that everyone is called by God to either foster or adopt?
No, no, I don't. um, what I feel is, okay, well, I'll just say what scripture says. I looked this up yesterday and was thinking about this. And I know, when people think about foster and adoption, especially from the Christian perspective,
Mm-hmm.
there's the verse that comes to mind, James 1:27. Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. Well, now obviously, God absolutely means what he says.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a number of times through scripture, where we see that God sees the orphans and he sees the widows.
Mm-hmm.
But I looked that up. What I read was the New International Version, and it says that we are to look after orphans. I was just curious yesterday and looked that verse up in different translations. And it said different things like we are to visit the orphans, we are to take care of the orphans, we are to reach out to the orphans. Really, I didn't find any evidence that it says that everyone is to take them into your home. I think you need to be open to that. The need is great. Want to take a foster child into your home, or if you want to adopt, you're probably going to be able to do that because the numbers of kids that need homes is very high. But that's not to say that if you don't feel God leading you to do that, God doesn't have a plan for you in it. You can give to agencies that support these children. You can support the family that adopts them. You can offer respite. You can be their friend. You can listen. There are lots of ways that you can look after, visit, take care of, reach out to orphans without going through the whole big process that my family has. And I feel like God still sees and honors that.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the same thing looking at the verse, go ye into all the world. That doesn't mean that all of us move to Africa or
Right.
all of us move to Papua New Guinea or wherever it is. We are to be missionaries wherever we are. We are to love the widows. We are to love the orphans in whatever manner God calls us. But I believe firmly that not everyone is called to bring these kiddos into their homes. In on personal side, I would love to foster. That just is something that I feel like I could give them the love and support that they need. But I know it would not be a good situation for one child in particular in my home. Bringing in foster kids would not provide him what he needs.
Yeah.
And so that is something that we have to, I believe, take into consideration. What would you add to that?
Oh, that's absolutely true. I wouldn't let lack of background keep you from fostering or adopting, because through fostering, adopting, we have built a village.
Exactly.
You build a circle. Our son came, he was 20 months old when he came to our home. He still was not walking. He still was not talking. And just naturally, those things were not going to happen. He needed speech therapy. He needed physical therapy. I did not know how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Now his previous foster home already had some things in place for him that we continued. And it was a situation where, those therapists came to our home and they taught us how to help him.
Yes.
And so, that's very important, that you just, find out what your resources are around you, decide what you're willing to take on. There were certain scenarios that we were not willing to bring into our home, that my husband and I were not comfortable with, that we didn't want our child around. But a child who needed speech therapy and physical therapy, I can do that. I can help a child learn how to talk. I can help them learn how to walk. If they need leg braces their whole life, he came to us with leg braces. If he needs them his whole life, I'm okay with that. I can help him with that. You just have to decide, what you feel capable of, or what you feel capable of learning.
Oh, I love that. You have to be willing to become a student.
You do.
Of that child and that child's needs. And I would say that as a parent as well. It's just sometimes the needs may be greater, they may not be. But I love what you said, that you don't have to have the background, but you have to be willing to pull the people around you, like the therapist, who can help you in that.
Yes,
I love
definitely.
that. Holly, I think you have given some fantastic suggestions. What else would you suggest to those who are thinking about adoption or foster?
Well, I know for me personally, my motivation was to add another child to our family, and fostering and adopting was the way that we wanted to do it. It was just the route that we had always wanted to go, something we always wanted to do, and we felt the timing was right. Let's move forward with this as a way, that this is the way we want to continue to build our family. This is what I want to do to build my family. Well, once we actually had the child in view, and we knew that this child was going to come to our home, and we began to learn his story and read his case notes and see his struggles, and find out where we had been, or where he had been. I remember the moment that my motivation changed. This isn't about me. It's not about me. This is not about me wanting another son or wanting another child in my home. This is because a child needs a home.
Wow.
So you really want to go at fostering, especially adopting, from the perspective of, I want to give a child a home that needs a home. Bring the child to me that needs my home. Yes, I think God puts it in your heart to do it, or you wouldn't do it.
Right.
But the motivation really needs to be from the perspective of the child. Kids need homes. Lots and lots of kids need homes, and someone may need your home.
Oh, I love that. And isn't that just the Christian life as a whole? Our focus is on, what does God desire for us to do, not what we want.
Yes.
And how is this going to fit into our plan and our desires? It's, God, what do you want from me in this vapor of a life, to quote Ecclesiastes?
Yeah, exactly.
So one of the things that I want to also talk about is the relationship between your biological son and your adopted son. One of the things in all the conversations I have had with you, Holly, I have never felt this divide in your boys. They are your boys. You see them as your sons. You don't call him one you're biological and one you're adopted. They are your boys. Tell me why. Tell me how has that helped? Tell me how that is in your heart.
I think if the situation wasn't right, I think it could feel that way. I think you could feel the separation. I think you could see it that way. But when you get a child that really is a fit for your home, they fit. And I think there was a period of time, where we still kind of explained it that way to people. But it was more because we just really thought it was cool what had happened to our family. We just adopted him, you know, and we just thought that was really neat. We were happy about it. And we
Sure.
shared it that way, like you would present we had a baby and you want to show the world, we adopted him. But then we just kind of dropped that. We just kind of decided, we don't need to say that anymore. And then you get to the point where you don't even think it anymore. He's not our adopted son. He's our son. It's just, you don't even feel the separation of it anymore.
Oh, that's a great explanation. Just the same way that I don't call my 13-year-old the baby anymore. And what I find is if that would happen, in my mind, he would still stay my baby.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so we have to, with our words, exemplify what we want our heart to believe and what we want our heart to feel. And I know you feel that way. I watch the pictures that you share, listen to you talk about it. He is your child that God gave you, just like your biological is the child that God gave you. And you guys have done an amazing job at just showing what foster and adoption can be, should be. For this little boy, I just, every time you text me and say, you won't believe what he just did and how far he's come, and it just thrills my soul. This is what foster and adoption's all about.
Oh, we've got a good circle.
Mm-hmm.
We've been very fortunate. I have never seen favor like I have on this child. God really does see the orphan.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I cannot believe just the way he is loved everywhere he goes, whether people know the story or not. I see favor on him. Just it follows him. And our family has been blessed as a result of him being here. Blessings that we would not have received if he weren't here.
So I know, Holly, this wasn't part of your story, but let's say adoption was something that you felt God laid on your heart, but your husband was not on board at all. What would you tell that wife?
Your husband needs to be on board. It really does need to be a team.
Yeah, I agree 100%. When we walk forward in any big decision, I think that there's a reason why one spouse or the other doesn't agree. And we need to be patient with our spouse. We also need to accept that that is maybe not something God has called us as a married couple to.
Yes. I don't think God would call one of you and not the other. So it would be something that if it were truly something that he wanted you to do, he wouldn't call you to it and not your husband. So it would be either something that you needed to pray through, that God would work on him and change his heart, or maybe it's not the right time.
Yeah.
Maybe it will come later, or change your heart. If it's not something that God wants you to do, or the way he wants you to do it. He may be showing you the orphans because he wants you to do this sort of thing instead of bringing them into your home. Now that's something that you could do on your own. You could volunteer, or I'm sure there's lots of different things that you could do to take care of, reach out, visit, look after orphans on your own.
Well, you talked about that when the child came into your home, you didn't have clothes because you didn't know what age. And so I think one of the ways that we can love on fostering families is sharing the extra clothes that we have or extra toys we're not using or different things like that that are so practical, don't cost money, especially if we've outgrown these items our children have and don't need them anymore.
Yes. Our personal situation was that the family that he was fostered by before us, um, they lavished on him. They loved him to pieces. They did not feel called to be his adopted family. But when the day he came to our home, they brought him to our home rather than an agency bringing him to our home. His previous foster family brought him to our home.
Okay.
And when they left, our living room was full. Because they had, had everything that he needed for them.
Right.
That's not typical.
Mhm.
So yes, if you're looking for those, a place to give those clothes that have been outgrown, shoes that have been outgrown, toys that are still in good shape but aren't used anymore, there are foster adopt agencies that would take them and give them out probably within the week.
I love that. Holly, this has been a wonderful conversation. I'm just blessed to be able to talk with you about something that you're passionate about and for reasons, very understandable reasons. So I'd like to just end in prayer. Holly, would you just pray for our listeners? Pray for these kiddos who need homes, that we would know as Christian families, do we step up and open our doors, or do we come alongside? How do we love? If you would open us or close us in prayer, please.
Or Jesus, your word is true, and we believe that you see the orphan, and we believe that kids need homes. And I just pray that anything that I've said today will fall on ears that need to hear it. Will answer any questions that someone may have. Will clear up any confusion or hindrance or hang up that someone might have that has kept them from going forward. I pray for all those who are listening, that if it is your desire for them to go so far as to take a child into their home to foster, or to go as far as adopting and making them part of their family, I pray that you would give them wisdom and peace and direction, and that things would just fall into place as they did for us. I know the road can be hard and the journey can be tough and hearts can get broken along the way. But I thank you for the journey that my family has had, and I thank you for the blessing that you have placed in our home. And I just pray that even now you will lay on someone's heart to provide a home for a child or a sibling group or someone that needs it, and that they could just be blessed by just experiencing a little of your heart. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Holly.